طبعا هذا جزء بسيط من أرشيفي اللي موجود يمي حاليا.
Here are the photos of my colleagues who were killed in Iraq. That's my friend killed in Baghdad. That's a colleague killed there as well. And this one too, killed in Baghdad. And the last one here, also killed. Beside him, that's another artist who left to live in exile in Finland. This was in a show called Our Homeland Has Been Sold. It's because of this work that there were fatwas against us on the internet, from a network we don't know. They launch appeals for us to be hunted down, telling people it's okay to spill our blood. It's really the first time that fatwas like this exist against artists in Iraq.
Mayis Gomar was a star in Iraq. Today she's a refugee in the capital of Syria. She specialises in comedy and political satire. Her last show in Iraq almost cost her her life after she made fun of the government. Mayis takes us to Jaramana, one of the suburbs in Damascus that have been rebaptised Little Baghdad because of the large numbers of Iraqis living there. Everyone here knows Mayis Gomar. She was forced to leave Baghdad 3 years ago after surviving an attack by militants who opened fire on her as she was driving home. Most of the people here in Jaramana have fled violence and the threat from militants. Today it's estimated that 1.5 million Iraqis are living in Syria, mostly in the capital. A common sight here is vehicles loaded up with suitcases and baggage. They're part of the shuttle service between Damascus and Baghdad during the tourist season. The service is provided by small transport companies run by people like Mustafa, a former Iraqi army officer under the regime of Saddam Hussein. He came here to be treated for injuries he suffered in a militant attack and then stayed on.
The truth is, Syria is a country for holidaymakers. In summer, there are many tourists and Iraqis who come here to get away from the war there. Here, there's electricity, the climate is cooler, and people come to make the most of that. It's the most important season for us, with the flow of traffic between the two countries.
It's a trip that Mayis Gomar can't make, given the Iraqi embassy won't give her a new passport. But it's also because of the death threats against her.
When I see all those Iraqi cars loaded up with families going home to their countries, to Iraq, I have mixed feelings. I feel joy for those going back to their homes, but also terrible pain, with tears in my eyes. I can't follow them. I can't go back to my country.
Syrian authorities know that many of those who fled the war in Iraq don't seem ready to return home. A new influx of Iraqi refugees after an explosion of violence in 2006 led Syria to toughen up its immigration rules. Economists say that investments made by well-off refugees are not enough to balance out the downside of having a large Iraqi population.
Negative impact is increased inflation. Food prices have gone up in areas where Iraqis are staying. Real estate prices have increased. And the fact that in Syria many commodities are subsidized by the government, this increased demand on goods and services, whether it's food products or like fuel, electricity, transportation, all Iraqis have consumed all these products, and all these goods and services are subsidized by the government. So there was a negative impact on the social safety net of the system, if you wish.
While Iraqis are allowed to have businesses in Syria and those with skills can get work permits, opportunities are limited. Many think about leaving for Europe or the US, but getting a visa is far from easy. We met Adele near the Iraqi embassy in Damascus. We wanted to film the impatient crowds lining up to get in. Our cassette was confiscated. Adel tells us about his despair. He hasn't had any luck getting a job in Damascus. Officially, Iraqi refugees can't work here.
بالجواز مختوم يمنع من مزاولة العمل.
Adel tells us there's no question of working illegally, even if the Syrian authorities turn a blind eye in solidarity. And trying to get help from the UN Refugee Agency hasn't worked either.
أنا كنت مهندس بالقوة الجوية العراقية.
I was an engineer in the Iraqi armed forces. I left the army in 1992. I was young. But because of that, the UN didn't help me find a job in a different country. They think that someone who was in the army must have been part of the regime.
People we spoke to say physical aid given to Iraqi refugees by the UN and other NGOs is only a limited amount of support. And no matter what their faith, no one relies on help from the Iraqi government. This is the suburb of Sayyida Zainab, where many Iraqi Shiite Muslims live. Here they tell us that different communities get on well together with no evidence of division. This Kurd restaurant owner says peace and security are the most important things for him.
Thanks to God, we're doing very well here in Syria. No one disturbs us. We're really safe and comfortable. It's not like in Baghdad, where militias always came along. They kidnapped our loved ones and killed them because they had restaurants. All that to take their money. We couldn't stay there.
Everyone we met said they appreciate Syria's welcome, but many consider their time here as only temporary. While the better off among the refugees live comfortably in Syria, for others who had no resources in Iraq, it's increasingly difficult to make ends meet.
I want to emigrate, but the procedure for getting refugee status takes a long time. And Christians have more of a chance of getting refugee status in Western countries than Muslims. For 100 Muslim families, only 2 succeed, which is much less than for Christians.
But until other countries get more involved in helping Iraqi refugees, it's a matter of making the most of things in Syria.